This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through a velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Join you with the Cinephile, unseen, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 343. I'm your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., and I am recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here, I am going to be covering Passenger from 2026 and The Crimes of Stephen Hawke. So this is going to be my Scouring Through the Sixes, episode number 6, and this double feature here. So Passenger here is 2026 wide release, or it's actually from this year. This is when it's our initial releases. The Crimes of Stephen Hawke is 1936. This is from the United Kingdom. So the double feature here is going to be macabre morality. We have a literal boogeyman with Stephen Hawke, who is a pillar of the community, who is definitely very, I kind of get into it for my review there, but he is vicious. Then we have a supernatural entity in Passenger. So it kind of makes for an interesting double feature of one real, one not necessarily real, but implications of what they do is real. So for mini reviews, though, I have TerrorVision. This is my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch from 1986. Then I have a screener of Hacked, a double entendre of Rage Fuel Karma from 2025, getting its wide release this year. And then I also gave a rewatch here for my 2026 list of Iron Lung. And then it's going to be a little bit shorter of an episode, as I was saying, because I was at a bachelor party in Chicago the weekend prior, so it kind of throws a wrench into some of the things. And yeah, it's a busy little stretch for me. But I have a documentary, In Search of Darkness, 1999 to 1994, so that one came back to Shudder, so I was able to check that out. And then I have 2 episodes of 100 Years of Horror. I believe these are both, one's around Dracula, the other one is going to be about vampires. So I hope you enjoy, everything that I've said here, and I hope you enjoy coming this journey with me. Thank you so much for listening as well.
Dave,
Liam,
it's a trailer.
Watch It If You Can podcast. Join us for each episode as we create box sets of our favourite films and TV shows.
We go through the cast to see what else they've been in, along with any recommendations.
We pick our favourite characters, performances, moments and highlights from the soundtrack too.
We ask if there's anything to make it better and look at the lasting legacy of our pick.
We have a little fun with our quickfire round, and finally, what else would you like list based on themes from the episode.
Maybe, just maybe, you should watch it if you can.
What if they've already seen it?
Well, you can watch it again if you can.
Rise Coffee.
And for my first mini review here is going to be my 1986 Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch of TerrorVision from 1986, like I was saying. This is written and directed by Ted Nicolau. This stars Diane Franklin, Mary Warrenoff, and Garrett Graham. This is a body horror, dark comedy, satire, slapstick, sci-fi film that is from the United States. So this is an Empire film, actually, before they were Full Moon. So this is currently sitting on a 5.6 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a family's new satellite TV system starts receiving signals from another planet, and it soon becomes a passageway to an alien world. So this is one that I didn't know about when I was growing up. It took getting into podcasts that I heard people talking highly of this. So like I said, this is an Empire film before it was Full Moon, and I've seen this one previously, and I decided to do a rewatch as part of my Scouring through the Sixes. I knew that the first time that I saw it was fun, so I was excited to watch it on my Blu-ray copy as I got that double feature from Scream Factory with Video Dead. So where I'm going to start, though, is going to be... This has an interesting subtext regarding excessive television consumption. Unlike many Empire films, this critique of consumerism, shown through like this family's large home, their indoor jacuzzi and high-end satellite dish, their lifestyle is partly is like fueled by the parents' need to impress because they're swingers, and the parents are going to be Raquel and Stan, who are Warrenoff and Graham respectively. So the relevance of this theme remains clear today, as I can even relate to Raquel and their daughter of Susie, portrayed by Franklin, where the frustration when their TV fails, with the satellite goes out. I also want to explore the character here of Gramp, who is portrayed by Burt Remsen. He is eccentric. He seems to be like a war vet. He has paranoia, like things that he does. He's thinking that they're under attack and need to stay vigilant. He has toy airplanes stuck to his hat that he's wearing. This is all like over the top comedy, and we have like a single character. I don't mind doing this. His arsenal that he has of guns is crazy, and like other sort of military equipment. There's a commentary here about neglect by father figures. Since the son here of Sherman, portrayed by Chad Allen, he has a gun that he's walking around with for the most part. It's like an assault rifle. So the film also has an odd split. We get the comedy from the characters themselves. Now the tone then takes a darker kind of thing here when the monster attacks. There are shades of comedy with the character of Odie, portrayed by John Grice, and he is dating Susie. He comes back home with her. The ending is a whirlwind with an ending that I can support. How it's able to toe the line as a comedy horror was good. It also isn't an easy thing to do. This is more whimsical than I normally like, but I still had fun with it, and the bleak ending does help it there as well. So other themes to include would be the corrupting, brainwashing power of TV. It can also be seen as a portal, as we have this hungry monster that keeps coming through it. Stan puts it in like the do-it-yourself dish that almost seems like a scramble box where you could get more channels when you had cable. Something else would be the breakdown of the nuclear family. We aren't seeing the ideal parents with the white picket fence. They're swingers, the grandpa's a survivalist, and the children aren't in the norm. How it works, these all are well done. So another element of the story that I want to kind of talk about as well would be involving this character of Pluthar, who is William Paulson. Now, he's on a whole different planet. The monster that ends up starting to attack everybody in this one was supposed to be like killed almost as like garbage, but it ends up getting transmitted to Earth, and that's the satellite dish actually brings it into this family's house. So let's go over to the acting then. It's difficult to judge since everybody is playing it over top, like by design. To give credit here, I think that Franklin is great as his punk daughter. I had a crush on her from Amityville 2. Her makeup is definitely from the 80s. Graham and Warrenoff work as the parents. They play well off each other. As well off this couple they bring home of Spiro, portrayed by Alejandro Rey, and Cherry by Randy Brooks. I would also give credit here to Remsen. He was fine. Allen was interesting as Sherman. This plays with the trope of nobody believing the kid, and the rest of the cast were on the top for what was needed. All it's left to be the filmmaking aspects. The cinematography and framing capture the setting, while the sci-fi opening provides a strong tonal duality. John Carl Buechler's creatures, they stand out practical effects, with Robert Kurtzman involvement clearly is visible. Gross, effective goo replaces blood, and despite being over the top, the practical approach is a major asset. The theme song is memorable, and the score fits perfectly for what they needed. In conclusion, this is a highly enjoyable, low-budget Empire film that successfully merges over-the-top character comedy with darker monster horror. Beyond the whimsical tone and the practical creature effects, this is notable for its underlying commentary on consumerism, the corrupting power of excessive television consumption, and the breakdown of the traditional nuclear family. The intentional overacting by the cast, including Franklin, Graham, and Warrenoff, contributes to the fun, complemented by memorable practical effects from Buechler and a fitting score. The rewatch provides that this is an enduring charm and makes it a worthwhile, albeit eccentric horror comedy experience. The final bleak ending adds a satisfying note to the whimsical ride. So my rating here for TerrorVision, I'd give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Would recommend it. Then up next, I have a screener of Hacked, a double entendre of Rage Fuel Karma. This is from 2025. Getting its wide release here in 2026. Written and directed by Shane Brady. This was starring Owen Atlas, Colin Thompson, and Augie Duke. This is a comedy horror film that is from the United States. Currently sitting on an 8.5 on IMDb. And not enough ratings on Letterboxd. There's a bunch of people getting a 5-star. I'm assuming for for having worked on it or being related to people that have. This is more like a 4-star movie from what I'm seeing over there, with our synopsis being, in 2021, ordinary people Shane Brady and Emily Zurcher were hacked. $20,000 stolen. The story begins based on those true events. The rest, well, we wish we could have done to that jerk. So I got the chance to see this thanks to Scott Motisco, who sent over a press release. What I read sounded interesting. And since there's a screener available and this was a comedy horror film, I agreed to check it out. I will say it's light on the elements of the latter, but I can make the case for it. So the title was interesting. Since it's a wide release 2026 film, I agreed to check it out. So what I'm going to start with is what I enjoyed, and this is heavy comedic leanings that won't appeal to everybody. It's meta in nature, as Brady wrote, directed, co-starred in a story about his own personal experiences. While elements were fictionalized for cinematic effect, the movie presents an off-the-wall entertaining version of how he wished the situation would have unfolded. So for the film, though, what we're getting here is we have the Rumble family. There is a son, Ralph, portrayed by Atlas, and Freddie by Colin Thompson. And then the parents are going to be Augie Duke is Amy, and then playing the father here is going to be Mark, who is actually, Shane Brady is pretty much playing himself, fictionalized version of it. And what happens is they get their money stolen that they were trying to do for a down payment on a house by the Chameleon, and he is Chandler Riggs from The Walking Dead. So, starting with the truth of this, I feel for Shane and Emily. I was, with my now wife when she bought her condo, I wasn't even involved outside of the moral support, and it stressed me out. We were relieved when everything went through with the paperwork for building our current home. Now, the first time was pre-COVID, and the latter was post that time. Just knowing how rampant fraud can be, it makes me thankful that nothing like this happened with us. But I have been defrauded, and I know the helpless feeling, so that's something in its favor. Let's look at the sons, Ralph and Freddie. In reality, they're truthful, there was only 2 dogs and no children. Now, the ending sequence shows Emily, and she is carrying their first child, so congratulations to you if you or your husband hear this. Your significant other, I do apologize if you guys aren't married. Well, yeah. What is interesting is that we learn the perils of being in high school during COVID. These boys are neglecting their studies to make videos and play video games. It's through this that they cross the path with the Chameleon. Adding that element is fun, since I've read stories about things like this happening where like people from games get too worked up and mess with other people. It's truly plausible. Now, I will say that this is an outrageous movie. I don't hate it, since it's clearly not following what really happened and, is a fantasy. But we get things like Santa Claus, portrayed by Richard Riley. We have CIA agents, and there's even a moment where a camera will cut and somebody else is playing Mark. I thought that was a little bit odd, but they do a fourth wall break, which I'm not always a fan of, but since this is so meta to begin with, it made me laugh, and they wanted to make sure that the audience didn't miss out on the joke. It also carries a message with identity theft there and how, what they're trying to correlate with it. Also say 2 CIA agents. One of them is Kate, portrayed by Caitlin Nakin, also from Walking Dead. And then there's another one here that I don't know if I can find her easily. She'll pop up here in a second when I'm going through the other names. But this cast delivers over-the-top character-like performances that will enhance the comedy. Brady and Duke are relatable as this well-meaning parent struggling for control, while Atlas and Thompson excel as teens facing the consequences of reckless digital behavior. Riggs shines as this villainous troll, supported by solid, quirky performances from Nakin, Riley, Stanton, Kim, Castillo, and Scott. So my list that I'm working from isn't doing a great job. Let me see if I can actually pull this up here. But then some of the other ones that I really haven't kind of given too much information to. Glenn Stanton is Detective Dugas. He's one of the cops that actually is helping there. And then Kim is going to be Elisa Kim, who is a banker. She's kind of annoying for some of the things she does, but she plays that so well, so credit there. The other agent is Nova, portrayed by Mia Castillo. And then the last one here is going to be Hugh Scott, is playing this guy Marshall, who works for the title company. He's such a jerk because he isn't helpful and just says things that gets under people's skin. So also have to be the filmmaking aspects. Technically, this is well executed. Good cinematography and framing mask the modest budget, which isn't a hindrance. The effects, likely practical, are effective despite being semi-limited. While the torture of the Chameleon provides horror, even these moments are comedic and over the top. The music and sound design also appropriately support the production. So in conclusion, this succeeds as an outlandish and cathartic comedy, delivering a meta-revenge fantasy rooted in the creator's real-life experience with identity theft. While light on traditional horror, the film uses absurdist escapism and over-the-top caricature-like performances to explore relevant themes, including the digital anonymity, real-world consequences, and the failure of institutions. Justifying the Rumble's pursuit of vigilante justice. Technically sound, this has effective cinematography and sound design that I believe it's actually helps to kind of bring... It works well with the modest budget. This is well executed and entertaining romp that delivers its message with comedic flair. So my rating here for Hacked, a double entendre of rage-fueled karma. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 7 out of 10. And yeah, this should be hitting VOD here soon. From everything I was seeing, it looks like June 2nd is when this is going to be released. And the last feature here I'm going to be doing a mini review of is going to be Iron Lung. This is from 2026, written and directed as starring Mark Fishbach, who goes by the name on his, I think, YouTube channel of Markiplier. So this also has Carolyn Kaplan and Troy Baker. This is Genres here are going to be body, folk, monsters, psychological, supernatural, horror, and space sci-fi. This is from the United States. This is also based off of a video game. I don't know if that's in my later notes, but I just wanted to include that here. Synopsis. In a post-apocalyptic future after the Quiet Rapture event, a convict explores a bloody ocean on a desolate moon using a submarine called the Iron Lung to search for missing stars and planets. And so I'll go ahead and say that person who's the convict is Simon, portrayed by Fishbach. So this, if you would like to hear a mini review, is going to be episode 327. The ratings on IMDb are going to be 6.4, Letterboxd 3.2. So for this one here, we have Mark Fishbaugh, who goes by the original, or goes by his online name of Markiplier, takes a multi-hyphenated leap as writer, director, and star in this contained sci-fi space horror piece based on the popular video game. So the premise here, we set in a post-apocalyptic, we have this thing called the Quiet Rapture. There's not a whole lot of information that was given about that. I'd like to know more. We have this rudimentary submarine, the Iron Lung, to navigate an ocean of blood and look for resources. So atmospheric dread. The greatest strength is its suffocating, claustrophobic atmosphere. The camera rarely leaves the interior of the vessel, effectively pulling the audience into Simon's isolation. And when it does, these are usually just flashbacks and nightmares of things that have happened in the past to him. So technical excellence here. The sound design is great. The mix of practical and CGI heighten the tension, especially in the integrity as the sub fails. And Simon encounters a Lovecraftian cosmic horror in the deep, almost like an elder god type thing. So for this one though, Fishbach, he carries the film as his one-person show, delivering a powerful performance that portrays a harrowing descent into madness and paranoia. We don't know what's real, we don't know what's not, and everything. I love that. While the world building is intriguing, the plot is surreal and deliberate. It leaves some questions unanswered, and I think you might need... I've never played the game, so I don't know if there's some familiarity with the source to help fully grasp things that we're getting here. That's something I would like a little bit more of. But for me, despite some of these pacing lulls, it's a compelling exercise in psychological terror that rewards fans of atmospheric and character-driven horror. So for me, though, both watches, my rating has stayed the same. It definitely solidified my thoughts on it. I enjoy it. It's kind of an interesting little piece of cinema here. Doesn't necessarily do anything that I think it needs to be a little bit more done. So my rating, though, for The Iron Lung, I give a 6.5 out of 10. And I have a documentary here of In Search of Darkness, 1999 to 1994, a journey into iconic 90s horror. This is from 2024. It was directed and written by David A. Viner. This is featuring, amongst many others, Mike Flanagan, Clancy Brown, and David Dastmalchian. So this is a documentary history horror film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 7.9 on IMDb and a 3.9 on Letterboxd, for a synopsis being: film icons and genre experts share observations, experiences, and analysis to help reframe, deconstruct, and recontextualize the lost decade of horror, the 90s. So this is one that I was stoked to see return to Shudder. I watched a trilogy that was done for the 80s and then ended up watching the second part on the same service for the second half of the decade. There were some of my favorite documentaries, so just the sheer volume of films that are covered and the people they talk to about them and incorporating things that are happening in society during that time. This is one that I mostly treat like a podcast, watching late in my workday, looking down when something was particularly interesting. I actually also watched the very last section of this in my hotel room when I was on the bachelor party. So the installment seems to combine the approach of the 1980s documentaries by highlighting major hits and exploring some deeper cuts for each year from 1990 to 1994. Although I prefer the deeper dives of the third 80s volume, this remains engaging despite my familiarity with the more popular films and their well-known facts. I'm not saying that I knew everything they were sharing, though, either. So documentary succeeds with its interviewees. Since I was only 3 to 7 during these years, I was a little bit too young to see these films upon release. It's not to say that I didn't see them, either when they had been out for a couple years, or I definitely know that I came back to watch a lot of these for some of the summer series and whatnot that I've done in the past. So it's great hearing from industry professionals like Mike Flanagan, Davis Dastmalchian, Clancy Brown, Alex Winter, Heather Langenkamp, Jill Sholin, Ted Ramey, Robert Russler, Kane Hodder, and Charles Band, while others being like Phil Nobile Jr., Annie Choi, Akilah Cooper, and Corey Taylor provide us additional unique insights. Many other contributors are also featured here. So then this is just professionally made as well. The structure is good, where they'll inform what year they're exploring, titles are picked, and we hear from the experts. Then to help to make it not too repetitive, they'll have little vignettes that'll explore a subgenre, trend, or things to this effect. That's a fun way to help include even more films and information. The clips are edited in a great way that helps to make this flow better. These documentaries are professionally made and adds to it as well. So in conclusion, this is a professionally crafted documentary that successfully balances mainstream hits with deep cuts from the early 90s. Despite my familiarity with some of the material, the engaging contributions from a diverse array of industry professionals and fans make it a compelling watch. Its effective structure and use of thematic vignettes ensure a smooth flow, solidifying its place as a favorite for those interested in the evolution of horror cinema and its cultural context. So my rating here then for In Search of Darkness 1990 to 1994, I gave this one an 8 out of 10 as well. And then to end out my mini reviews here, I do have 2 episodes of 100 Years of Horror. This is a documentary that I first heard about on a podcast. I'm assuming probably the ABCs of Hidden Horror when they were going through their colossal collection. But I could be wrong on that, so if that's not the case, I do apologize. But I started figuring this out being on streaming on Amazon Prime, so I watched the first 2 episodes. The first one is going to be Dracula and His Disciples. So this one is featuring like archive footage from like Bud Abbott, Louise Albritton, and Roy Ward Baker. So this examines thematic portrayals of Bram Stoker's Dracula, including those of Bela Lugosi, John Carradine, and Christopher Lee. I'll also go ahead and say that Christopher Lee is the host of this one. There's a lot of also archive footage that is involved here. So this documentary was made in the U.S. This episode is sitting on a 7.1 on IMDb. So the opening of this is very cheesy. I'm only going to say it this first time here. It made me laugh because it's definitely like PlayStation 1 graphics, like early PlayStation 1. But like I said, my guy Christopher Lee, he is hosting this. He actually makes a great line here. The blood is the life. So this actually starts all the way back with, these are mostly just kind of covering different Dracula adaptations. So they go back with Nosferatu and its troubled start about how the family could not get, or Bram Stoker's family would not give the rights. So it ended up becoming where they're supposed to destroy the footage of it, and some of it got away. So then the first stage production, and that's kind of where the cape kind of was introduced and helped him to disappear on stage. And they talk about like Bela Lugosi taking on this, who turned it almost, he was actually a romantic lead at the time. And then, obviously he was in Dracula from 1931, I believe. Also came back to reprise the role for Mark of the Vampire. But interesting there is that Universal had the copyright not on him or the look, just the name. So that's why Mark of the Vampire could allow Bela Lugosi to once again take on that role. Kind of fun here to see that Fred Olen Ray was interviewed. So then they also bring up stuff like Lon Chaney Jr. was in Son of Dracula, playing Alucard, who's supposed to be the son of Dracula, or he might even actually be Dracula, but regardless, I think it's actually supposed to be the son, though. So House of Frankenstein, that's where John Carradine stepped in. He was actually Shakespearean trained. They also reference Billy the Kid versus Dracula, which is almost like a self-parody of it as Carradine got older. But this is mostly a clip show. They did point out that there's an interesting one here from 1946 called Scared to Death. That was Bela's only color film, and he was playing a vampire-like character there. Also kind of fun to hear from his son, Bela Lugosi Jr. They also show some outtakes from some of these Universal Classic films, so that was kind of interesting to see there. And then Plan 9, that was the last footage ever shot of a similar character for Bela. Then there's also like a Return of Dracula that was Francis Lederer. I've not heard of that one. They do come up to Hammer, talk about that a little bit here, where Christopher Lee, shined as that character. The interviews are just fun to see and kind of fill in some of the gaps. So my rating then for Dracula and His Disciples gave it a 7 out of 10. And then they stick with the vampire theme with episode 2 being Blood Drinking Beings. This is 100 Years of Horror, looks at vampires and other blood-sucking creatures. This features archive footage from Roy Ward Baker and Ralph Bates and Paul Birch. This one is sitting on a 7.2 out of 10. And this one here, this references a lot of early ones like Planet of the Vampires. They bring up Isle of the Dead as well with Boris Karloff. He was also in Black Sabbath, where he plays the Voderlock, which was a vampire character. They actually also go back to Carl Theodore Dwyer's Vampire. That one is from the 30s as well, I believe. It's kind of also fun to see that Brink Stevens was interviewed here. But then they also talk about some other influences along with like what Dracula was. So this is more like the non-Dracula films like Carmilla. So there's an early adaptation of this, which is Blood and Roses. I actually enjoy that one. They bring up the Hammer takes as well, which there was a trio of these, Karstein trilogy, that was the Vampire Lovers, Lust for a Vampire, and Twins of Evil. This is where they go a little bit more erotic with it, maybe not going too far, but closer to that. I do believe Bela Lugosi was in The Vampire Bat, which came out 2 years after Dracula. There's another one called Dead Men Walk. Then, of course, they bring up The Fearless Vampire Killers, which was directed by Roman Polanski. That's a bumbling comedy with some horror elements in it. They circle things around to Elizabeth Bathory, which like Countess Dracula is one of the films that use her as the villain. There's Werewolf or the Vampire Woman. This was a take that was done by Paul Naschy, where that's Elizabeth Bathory is also supposed to be the Vampire Woman in that, where he plays the werewolf. Lugosi was in Devil Bat from 41, which that's the one I was actually thinking of, where he creates a vampire creature that goes out. There's also a chemical reaction one that is causing the person to crave blood in the vampire. So in theory, you also have like the Thing from Another World, the Last Man on Earth, and the Omega Man are all vampires as well. They bring up Roger Corman's Not of This Earth. This alien is vampiric in nature. And we also get to see archive interview from Carolyn Monroe as she was in Captain Kronos, another Hammer production. But this one, very kind of similar to the first one, I gave a 7 out of 10 to and rather enjoyed it, and they're kind of fun. So that's all I have here for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review. And for my first featured review here is going to be Passenger from 2026, directed by Andre Overdahl. This is written between Zachary Donahue and T.W. Burgess. This stars Jacob Sapio, Lou LaBelle, something like that, and Melissa Leo, while also featuring the likes of Joseph Lopez, Miles Fowler, Alan Trong, DeVille Johnson, James William Clark, Tony Dope, Charles Leggett, June Clemens, Bonnie Bichon, William Lin Joey Freitas, Michael Hilo, Norman LaSperance, Brent Bedrosa, and Jessica Cruz. So this is got a few different things here. Body, folk, monster, psychological, supernatural horror thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.6 on IMDb and a 2.3 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: after a young couple witnesses a gruesome highway accident, they soon realize they did not leave the crash scene alone, as a dynamic presence called the Passenger won't stop until it claims them both. So that presence is actually be portrayed by Lopez, and this is a film that I learned about from the trailer ahead of seeing a movie. When I realized that this was going to be a new horror film, I stopped watching. The bit that I saw looked interesting. I'll be honest though, I didn't know this was going to be more creature feature akin to like The Monster from like 2016, or more of we got here with like a curse. Something else I didn't even realize until settling in to watch this is that it was directed by Overdahl. He's a director that I'm a fan of, and I did come at this one as blind as possible aside from what I've already shared here. So let's go ahead though and start with some of my featured notes that I have here, and I will start with our director of Overdahl. He has directed 8 features, and I've seen 5 for 62%. Everything that I've seen is in the horror genre, with The Autopsy of Jane Doe, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, this, and Troll Hunter. The only one that I'm missing isn't even released yet according to Letterboxd, which is Bendy and the Ink Machine, so I've seen 83% of his horror output. So we have 2 writers. First is going to be Burgess. This is their feature film debut. Then Donahue, his co-writer, has done 3 movies and 1 short. First of his that I've seen, everything is in horror, with The Den from 2013, and it looks like they have one that is not out as of yet called Human Remains. So then over to our cast, we begin with Lola Bell. She's been in 4 motion pictures and 1 short, first of hers that I've seen, also her first horror film. Then her co-star of Sapio has been in 16 features and 2 shorts, first that I've seen. Has one other one in genre with something called Onslaught that looks to be out later this year. Or might be already out right now, I just didn't even realize it. So let's then look at Leo, who has been in 107 films and 8 shorts. I've seen 10 of her works. Not horror would be Prisoners, The Big Short, and The Fighter. She has been in 4 in genre. I have now seen 2 of them. I've seen this and Hide and Seek. I have not seen Red State or Dead Time Stories. I also want to give credit here to Lopez, as this is the first of his 18 works that I've seen. Also has 17 shorts, has done 9 in horror though. Top 3 that I'm missing are going to be Dead Male, Insidious, Out of the Further, which I don't believe is actually released as of yet, and then Bloodstar. Alright, so let's jump into this here, and we start with 2 guys that are driving down the road as it cuts through a forest at night. So we have Lucas Tedesco, portrayed by Fowler, and he is sleeping while the driver is Daniel, portrayed by Trong. Now, he messes with his buddy and it terrifies him awake. The banter back and forth is pretty good here, with Lucas needing to relieve himself eventually, and that's what's going back and forth, is that Lucas drinking a lot of water, Daniel gives him grief for it. So he goes down an embankment and thinks that Daniel is just messing with him as the horn starts, and it seems like he's just laying on it. This annoys Lucas as he comes back up to see that his friend is missing and all the doors as well as the trunk are open on the car. Lucas gets the scare of his life and tries to flee. Things then shift to what I believe is going to be 6 months later. We meet our couple here of Maddie, portrayed by Lulabelle, and she is finishing up packing while Tyler, who is Sapio, brings back their new vehicle. Their plan is to live out of this van that is set up kind of like a camper or like a tiny house. They're hitting the open road and travel in the country. A bit more backstory that we'll learn is that Tyler had a rough upbringing where he had a home, he had parents and everything like that, but things didn't go well, like I was saying, so he just kind of wants to be free of being locked down. Maddie, though, was raised in foster care, so she's hoping to lay down roots finally. So his duo then runs into their first bit of trouble. They slept on a beach, and in the morning, Maddie wants to try this barbecue spot on their way to the resort that they're staying at. Tyler is fearful that they'll be late. He gives in, and he's also right. He has a big question for Maddie that gets interrupted, and she seems to love him, but to be honest, though, they definitely seem to be on different pages. So that night, things turn into a nightmare. Tyler is sleeping while Maddie is driving to a motel they're going to stay at. A car comes up on them. They ride the van's bumper and then they finally pass. Further down the road, they see that this car was in an accident. It ran into a tree. The couple calls the police to report what they found, and then Maddie sees Lucas trying to get out and something pulls him back in. She then notices somebody kind of lurking around at the edge of these woods. She's not fully sure though because it is, dark. It might even be a little bit rainy and everything like that, but Tyler doesn't see anybody. Due to all this tension, it is decided they're going to go to a gathering of people that are like them that they could, check out, kind of learn a little bit from them, just kind of see what they're doing out there. He's intrigued and excited to meet an influencer who actually inspired Tyler that they, see him when they park. Maddie meets a woman of Diana, portrayed by Leo, who gives her advice. She does seem to be nervous hearing some of the things that Maddie is saying about the night previous. So our couple then continues their journey, but it seems that whatever Maddie saw is following them. Tyler at first doesn't experience it, but seeing the terror on his fiance's face makes him believe. They must figure out what there is after them before they meet a similar fate to others who have experienced what they have. So let's really my recap and introduction of the characters. I want to start is I originally saw this on the Tuesday following its opening weekend. I did see that some people weren't caring for this necessarily. That did temper my expectations, but I also like to come in as a blank slate and just kind of follow what the movie takes me. What I will say is that there are things here that hooked me and some things that feel a little bit too generic as well. So the film has some strong positives, starting with an engaging concept. This follows like a familiar J-horror structure where we have this opening duo and then a main couple being cursed. It stands out because the protagonists are undeserving victims punished by their good nature. As a fan of road horror, I enjoyed the sense of like inescapable dread, reminiscent of something like Race with the Devil, where haunting persists no matter how far they travel. Now, something else that worked would be the use of folklore. It is woven into like the rules of the road, though I'm unsure if these are real or created for the film. By the time that Deanna warns them to not drive at night, and if they do, don't stop, the couple's already done both of these. A roadside book introduces Maddie to the hobo symbols from the dawn of the interstate era, and her discovery of a mark representing the entity was a great touch. These are all things that definitely work for me, as it kind of helps to build this mythology and then kind of go from there. Let's then shift over to this entity. I'm going to tread a little bit lightly here to not spoil anything, but I will say is I love the concept. We don't get an information dump per se. The extent of what we learn is what Maddie finds in this book and then what they find online. Early on, Tyler hangs a St. Christopher's medal. A tale gets introduced and alludes to the age of the specter. That was something I found creative since this was incorporated in like religious lore as well. And then other themes to include here would be like the duality of this couple. I touched on this slightly, but I do like seeing this restless nomad in Tyler and trying to come to terms with his significant other who is craving a permanent home. This then explores this with like the haunted house being in their van. It is invaded by this entity and they have nowhere to go. This does seem to lean heavily into showing how dangerous the open road is and that settling down roots is the safer route. In general, that makes sense. It does have like an inherent threat to the unknown and the other. Then regarding filmmaking, this is where I have an issue. Starting with the positive though, the cinematography and framing effectively capture and convey this van's claustrophobia as the highwayman haunts them. However, the editing relies too heavily on jump scares. While some were effective, more sustained dread would have fit the mean-spirited tone better. Although the sound design and music enhance the atmosphere and occasional like brutality is appreciated, the CGI heavy effects contribute to an overall generic Hollywood feel. Although it's something to be the acting performances, where I do a couple pieces of trivia. Lulabelle and Shapio were good as our leads. What I like is that we're seeing this couple at a crossroads. They love each other. Marriage between them would work or could potentially work, but the issue currently is that they want different things with their lives. I do think that this works well in building on that story. Leo is good as this expert and harbinger. Lopez has this great look as the entity. I like what Fowler and Tronk did to set the stage. Other than that, I think the rest of the cast kind of rounded this out for what was needed as well. So then the two pieces of trivia is some RV-related scenes were filmed in two locations, one being Washington State at the Unclaw Expo Center, which that was around February 2025. And then in Grand Coulee, which was March 2025, actual RV and camper van owners participated in the production with their RVs as extras for the Umnikla Festival shots. Actual artisans and food vendors from the area displayed and sold items during the production. That's kind of a cool thing to do there. I actually really like that. So filmed at a ranch that was part of the largest beef co-op in the country as well, if you were curious. So in conclusion, this is a solid entry into the road horror subgenre that succeeds through its engaging concept, effectively weaving together themes of duality and atmospheric folklore. While the acting performances from the leads and supporting cast provide a strong emotional anchor, the film is somewhat hampered by its execution, specifically an over-reliance on jump scares and generic CGI that detracts from its more creative elements. Despite these pitfalls, it remains a worthwhile watch for fans of the genre looking for a mean-spirited and dread-filled journey. So my rating then for Passenger, I like this one well enough. I don't think it's great, but I think it's fine for what it does, and I give this a 7 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section, not anything deeper that I want to kind of delve into there, because that would just literally just take me to, just revealing things for the sake of doing it. So let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
I was wondering where you were.
Julia, not in bed yet? Well, I'm glad. I wanted to see you before I left.
You're going away, Father? Now, at once?
Yes, an urgent business call.
But, Father, at this time of night?
I'm afraid I must. And I may be away some time. The business I have on hand may be long and difficult.
Then I must pray for its speedy completion.
All ready to go. Everything's on board. All right, Matt. Goodbye, my darling.
I think goodbye is such a horrid word.
Yes, but it's a beautiful word, too. For it means God be with you. And that's how I want you to take it from me.
I'll see you off, Father. I hate to see you going out into the night air like this.
Thank you, dear. Good evening, Archer. Stephen Hawke! Pardon the intrusion, but the window was open. And after all, what is ceremony among good friends? Don't ring that bell. If the slightest move or sound, and I'll blow your brains out. I thought you were dead. I know you did. That's why I'm here. I've been away on government business. You didn't know I was in the government service, did you? But I was. I should be still. But I heard rumors, vague rumors, that you were to be married tomorrow. And who do you think the silly gossip mongers coupled your name with? No, don't try to guess. I'll tell you, with my daughter, Julia. You can't bluff me, Hawke. I know who you are and why you're here. But you're too late. She becomes my wife tomorrow. You're clever, Archer, but not clever enough. You're right. I am the spine breaker. So many I've come to grips with. Lord Trelawney's son, with his skinny little arms. Lady Kingsmead with her white flabby shoulders. Sir Geoffrey London with a tough back, but brittle. It went just like the rest. And now, you. You shall have your way. I'll give her up. I won't marry her. After having made her promise, hardly a gentlemanly thing to do, eh? Still, if you wish to cancel the affair, what can I do but accept? So come, we'll shake hands on it, eh? Won't you shake hands with me? It's time we got to grips. So long since we met. Too proud, eh? Then I must take it. Oh, you're breaking my arm! Are you frightened, Archer? You're the one who has found me out before it was too late. All the others discovered my secrets after I demonstrated my skill. You are luckier. You are about to watch the whole process. Oh, not that! Not that! Oh! Oh! Take me! Take me if you can! Come on, you curs! I'll beat you yet! Julia.
Father.
Something you ought to know. Something I should have told you years ago when I adopted you.
Adopted me?
Yes. That makes a difference, eh? You're not really my daughter.
If that would make any difference.
I might have known you'd say that, but it makes me happy.
And for my second featured review here is going to be The Crimes of Stephen Hawke from 1936, directed by George King. Now, this is written between a few different people here. So Jack Celestin did the dialogue. Frederick Hayward did the screenplay. There's some additional dialogue by H.F. Maltby, and then the scenario was done by Paul White, and then Todd Slaughter is getting some uncredited stuff for the opening, which I'll kind of get back into that here in a second. But this is starring Todd Slaughter, Marjorie Taylor, and DJ Williams. Now, the only trivia I was actually able to find is that this is Marjorie Taylor's debut, so feature film debut. This also is featuring the likes of Eric Portman, Graham Stoughton, something like that, Gerald Barry, George M. Slater, Charles Penrose, Norman Pierce, Flotsam and Jetsam, and this I believe actually is B.C. Hilliam and Malcolm McEachran. I think I remember how you say that. Those are those two guys there. There's also Cecil Bevan, Annie Esmond, Jack Sharp, Harry Terry, and Ben Williams. So this is a crime drama thriller film that also I would kind of consider to be in horror there. This is from the United Kingdom. It is currently sitting on a 5.7 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd, where our synopsis being. A crazed killer known as the Spinebreaker is terrorizing London with a series of grisly murders. The police seem powerless to stop him. So this is one I learned about when I was compiling my list of horror from 1936. Having seen a couple of works that starred Slaughter gave me an idea of what we'd get here. So this is another one that I've also seen that starred him, and also being directed by George King. Now, he was also in that version of the Sweeney Todd story that I did a couple weeks ago of The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Other than that, I did come into this one blind. So before I jump into the movie itself, let's do some feature notes. I'm going to start with our director here, King, who has worked previously with members of this cast, like I've kind of already brought up there, but he's helmed 36 features and 2 shorts. I've now seen 2 for 5%. So 5 of his works are in genre. Both of what I've seen are here, so it's going to be, again, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. So I'm at 40% of his horror output. We have 1 assistant director of Ronald Kinnock. This is their only credit. We have 4 writers, and First is White. This is their only credit. Hayward came up with the Sweeney Todd story. He has done 3 motion pictures. I've now seen 2. I'm just missing Crimes at the Dark House. Now, Celestin, this is their only film as a writer. Maltby has done a little bit more. He's worked on 26 movies. I've seen 2 for 7%. 4 of his works are in horror. I've seen 2. He also worked on The Demon Barber. I have not seen Crimes at the Dark House or The Ticket of Leave Man, which is 50% of his stuff. So, getting to the cast, I've already brought up Slaughter a couple times. I've seen 3 of his 14 films for 21%. He also did 7 shorts. So, I've seen Maria Martin or The Murder in the Red Barn, which I consider to be in genre. I think IMDb does as well, but I've seen 2 of his 8 for 25% that are in genre. The top 3 that I'm missing are going to be The Face at the Window, Crimes at the Dark House, and The Ticket of the Leave Man. Then to Taylor, she was in 8 features, first version I've seen. 3 are in horror. I have not seen The Face at the Window or The Ticket of the Leave Man yet. Last will be Williams. He was in 44 films. I've seen 6. All look to be in genre. I'm at 13% of his overall horror output. I've seen 5 of 6 in horror from him. Maria Martin is 1. So I'm at 5 of 6 officially for 83%, having seen Demon Barber, Scrooge, The Man Who Lived Again, The Ghost Train, and now this. I have not seen The Pointing Finger, which might actually be a lost film when I was looking at the year, but I'll have to double check that when I am moving back through to work. I think it's through like 1930 is when that one came out, so we'll see. But then jumping in here. So I want to first start and talk about the poster, which looks badly photoshopped, especially since our villain, Stephen Hawke, portrayed by Slaughter, is holding a knife to somebody. The head of the victim isn't lining up great. Much like the other films that were like featuring this lead actor, it has a framing story that we get before we actually jump into the movie itself. So this one actually starts with this duo of Flotsam and Jetsam as themselves singing a song that was kind of incorporated what I'm assuming is headline news. There's also an interview with Slaughter as he sets the stage for the story that we're seeing. It's supposed to be presented as the 100th episode of In Town Tonight, which is supposed to be like a BBC thing, and we're supposed to be seeing inside of the BBC studio. So I'll actually say this doesn't pull its punches necessarily. We see a boy who goes outside to play. So this is going to be like Victorian era, and it appears that his family is well off. The boy encounters Hawke, who kills him. It then shifts to Stephen fleeing the scene with his coach driver of Nathaniel, portrayed by Stoughton. So we are then inside of an office building. We have Matthew Trumbull, portrayed by Portman, comes in to see his father, Joshua, portrayed by Williams. So the father is a shipping magnate and shares his building with his old friend here of Stephen. Now what we'll learn is that Stephen is a moneylender. For the most part, he appears to be like a pillar of the community and respectable. He is ruthless, though. Stephen also harbors a secret. Julia, portrayed by Taylor, is his daughter, but it sounds like he took her in and kind of adopted her. They're not related by blood, but he'll do anything for her. Joshua reveals that his son is interested in her hand in marriage. So we actually get to see a little bit more depravity of Stephen as we get to just learn more about his character. Sir Franklin, portrayed by Penrose, visits and informs Stephen that Lord Brickhaven, portrayed by Slater, will not be attending Julia's party. I think it's her 18th birthday. This infuriates Stephen, and he squeezes Franklin's hand. This brings a realization to his victim that he's standing before this person of the spine breaker. Stephen demands that he does whatever it takes to get this gentleman to get to the party. It is then that we get to meet Matthew, and that he has competition for Julia. There is Miles Archer, portrayed by Barry, and it seems like he's a local constable or works in law enforcement. Lord Brickhaven seems to think that he's a better match for Julia. Stephen sees an opportunity, despite the love of this young woman as like a father figure, is that he sees a way where he can almost broker a deal. Things then take a turn when Joshua makes a startling realization about his best friend Stephen, and he decides that this needs to be dealt with. Before that happens, Joshua puts a safeguard to protect him or expose who the killer is. Matthew then sets on a path to expose who the spinebreaker is without becoming a suspect himself. He also has Julia's feelings to consider. So that's really my recap of the character. What I want to start is bringing back up how this begins. It is an interesting choice that it felt like a variety show and the story is going to be the main event. I'm not entirely shocked by that, knowing the history of like theaters and how you'd get like a serial, a cartoon, a newsreel before you actually got to your main thing, maybe even a short film. This feels in the vein of that, just included. Then to include and actually jump into the main story, how mean-spirited this is when it came out was interesting. I'd be shocked to learn how long it took to be shown in the United States, mostly for what Stephen does in the opening sequence where he attacks a child. We don't see it. It's more implied, and you hear him, I believe, yelling, and then he's found. Now, a bit of a spoiler, he does get his comeuppance in the end, so that might be enough for the censors to not completely ban this, but I cannot confirm that at this time. Delving more into this, we have a service-level character study of Stephen. It is intriguing because this can be a way of like showing the dangers of capitalism, and this banker as part of why he kills his greed. He wants Lord Brickhaven to come to Julia's party because he has a priceless emerald ring that he thinks is very valuable. He makes threats that if money isn't paid to him, he will take care of them. Stephen is also a psychopath, so there's that as well. Slaughter plays this role a bit over the top with the glee, and it makes it even creepier. That's something to give credit to. Let's then go over to the other character who becomes his nemesis, Matthew. Before the tragedy that befalls his father, we see Joshua connect with Stephen, that he is the spine breaker. Joshua confides in his son, who laughs it off, thinking that his father is mistaken. Once the father is attacked, Matthew goes on a mission of revenge. That feels a little bit formulaic and almost Shakespearean, but it works. Portman does a solid job at navigating the emotions needed to deal with the loss of his father and the love that he has for Julia. Something else I found interesting is how badly this displays male characters. Matthew is short with Julia to start his vendetta, but there is a good reason. We already know that about Stephen. Nathaniel aids him. Sir Franklin does as well out of fear. Lord Brickhaven has an opinion on who Stephen's daughter should marry. That is more of like the time that it's set, which I believe is Victorian, like I was saying earlier. But that does bring me to Miles. He is willing to protect the truth about Stephen if Julia agrees to marry him. He gets a punishment as well, which is a bit overboard. His plan makes him a great character, though, in my opinion. Then there's this other theme that gets explored, including the duality of respectability and monstrosity. There's one that I'm a big fan of, though. Even though Stephen doesn't seem to hide it all that well, I do like this idea that he's an important member of society, but we don't know what people do behind closed doors. There's also interesting duality between him and Julia. She is doing everything right, and he's completely corrupt. In the end, the truth of what he's doing hurts her. I've already brought up the economic exploitation, the dangers of greed. Let's then shift over to the acting performance. I've already said and given credit here to Slaughter and Portman. They're both good as the opposing characters to each other here. The hurt of loss hardening Matthew. Taylor is fine as the one good thing that Stephen has done in raising her. The issue is that she disappears for long stretches and isn't given much to work with. I like Williams, Soughton, Barry, Slater, and Penrose, along with the rest of the cast around the software was needed. All that I think then is left here to do is filmmaking aspects. In general, it is made well for the era. I do think the cinematography and framing work well in capturing that. I did like the set piece of the party along with the tragedy that is happening there. When Stephen goes on the run, being chased by Matthew, that was good. It is limited by the effects used, but doesn't necessarily need them either. Other than that, the sound design fits without necessarily standing out. In conclusion, this is a notably mean-spirited entry for the 1930s that effectively explores themes of economic greed and duality of respectability through monstrosity. Driven by the over-top glee of Slaughter and solid counter-performance by Portman, this overcomes its formulaic elements with filmmaking that remains sturdy for the era. It stands as an intriguing character study of a psychopath hiding behind the pillar of the community that he is, ultimately delivering a dark, impactful experience for fans of early British horror. So my rating here is that I'm going to give The Crimes of Stephen Hawke a 6 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily think there's anything to delve deeper into there, so let me go ahead then and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the PodNation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode, it's going to be another of my scouring through the sixes. And for the two featured reviews, what I'm going to be having here is going to be Shadow of Chinatown. I might end up watching two versions of this because this is actually a serial that is like 4 hours long. And there's also a condensed down version that's an hour and a half. Let's see how time permits for me to do that. But I've already checked out Backrooms. I went to the Gateway Film Center to check that out. So it'll be the two featured reviews there. Now my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch, I'm going to be moving into the 90s. I'm in my last two that are going to be from the 80s. And this is going to be Witchboard. Have not watched this for a very long time. This is one that was kind of an interesting little one in my childhood. And then as of right now, my 2026 rewatch is going to be Twisted. And I'll have more mini reviews for you. I know I've watched a couple more episodes of that 100 Years of Horror. That'll be on there as well. So I think I have a couple shorts as well that are going to be screeners. So yeah. But I don't think there's anything else I need to say here for this outro except... that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending